There are all sorts of paranormal activities going on in different places. When it comes to most of these places, the locals would even warn you that you are likely to meet with ghosts or hear sounds. However, some places are not that popular regarding paranormal activity, but it is definitely there. Some have been investigated, but others are just urban legends and no one has dared to test the theory. Today we will look at some of the scariest haunted places you have never heard of. Stay tuned because it will get a little spooky. Poveglia Island. Somewhere in the South Lagoon between Venice and Lido, there is a small Italian island called Poveglia. Centuries ago, it served as a refuge, stronghold, place of exile, and dumping ground for the deceased, dying, and diseased. In the late 1800s, an asylum was built on the island, and the mentally ill were taken here. The asylum was erected for the sake of it, so it was not perfectly constructed. This was used as a place of exile rather than rehabilitation. According to legend, a doctor in the 1930s performed strange experiments on patients here. However, it is said that the doctor eventually lost his mind and threw himself from the asylum's tall bell tower. Even though the bell tower was removed decades ago, the locals still claim to hear the chimes echoing from the lonely island. Right now, the island sits without any form of life on it, and the locals are prohibited from visiting it. The fishermen do not even come close to the abandoned island. In recent years, an Italian construction crew tried to renovate the former hospital building, but they just stopped without an explanation. The locals speculate that they were driven away by the dark forces that supposedly reside in this area. Could it be true? Edinburgh Vaults. Scotland's capital city has had its fair share of rich and haunting history. It went through Roman occupation and Viking raids until 1035, when Duncan I became the first king of Scotland. The city of Edinburgh spreads across 7 major hills, 2 of which are visible in the present-day city center. These are Castle Hill, where Edinburgh Castle currently sits, and Calton Hill. By the 19th century, the vaults in Edinburgh were completely closed off for good. This was in an attempt to drive off the seedy activity that was going on under Edinburgh's thoroughfare. This included prostitution, gambling, and even a black market. For decades, the vaults were successfully closed, and they were empty as their marred past slipped into obscurity. However, the secrecy of the vaults ended in 1988, when a local man managed to crawl through a narrow passageway in one of his buildings. He ended up discovering the rooms that were underneath the South Bridge, which was constructed in 1785. Since they were discovered, the vaults of South Bridge became known to the public, and people started swarming in to see for themselves. However, this was accompanied by reports of ghosts in the vaults. Some witnesses reported feeling a cold gust of air, hearing voices, and even seeing and sensing a supernatural presence. Some of the ghosts were even bolder, such as the spectral child Jack, who goes ahead and grabs a visitor's hand while in the wine vault. There's another menacing presence that has been named Mr. Boots. This is an unkept man who has been given the name because of his tall boots. Mr. Boots has been said to lurk around the back section of the vault, and he reportedly pushes and throws rocks at visitors. Some people have even said that they can hear his feet on the cobblestones, and his voice currs throughout the chambers. This place has a lot of history, as well as a lot of theories. In the 1820s, the infamous serial killers William Burke and William Hare lived in these same vaults. It is also speculated that this is where they killed 17 of their victims. There have been dozens of other deaths caused by diseases and crime. All this makes the vaults under South Bridge one of the world's most haunted places. If you are daring enough, you can take a guided tour through the South Bridge tunnels. Who knows? You might just meet Jack or Mr. Boots. Ancient Ram Inn. The Ancient Ram Inn was built in 1145, and since then it has served many purposes. It was once a former priest's residence, then an inn, and finally a public house. Furthermore, it is the oldest building in Watton-under-Edge, England. Even before the building was constructed, the area's story began in the low-lying wetlands near Potter's Pond. This plot of land is unique in that it sits at the crossroads of 2 ley lines. These are areas that people believe has significantly high spiritual energy. If you use a map, these lines can be traced back to England's most famous sacred site, Stonehenge. According to legend, the energy from Stonehenge travels the ley lines and feeds the property's paranormal power. In addition, the site is home to a 5,000-year-old pagan burial ground. The building was first home to masons, slaves, and workers who were constructing St. Mary's Church. Directly across the street from the ancient Ram Inn were streams on the inn's grounds that had to be diverted around the church's site. Locals believe that the dark energy in the area was caused by the redirection of water on the ancient Ram Inn site. One of the most well-known legends associated with this haunted English mansion is that of a witch who was allegedly burned at the stake. It is said that the burning occurred in the 1500s, when the burning of those who did not practice government-sanctioned Christianity was rampant. Most people believe that this woman's spirit still roams in one of the ancient Ram's Inn's rooms, specifically the one she took refuge in before being captured and killed. To date, this room is known as the Witch's Room. In the late 1960s, a man named John Humphreys decided to protect the building and its history by making it his home. So in 1968, he successfully bought the house. On his first night there, he was already introduced to the angry ghost living in this place. He recalls that after he went to bed, he was grabbed by his arm by a demonic force and dragged out of bed and across the room. However, this was not enough for John to move out, and it is said that he still lives there to this date. In his home, Humphreys has found evidence of ritual sacrifice and devil worship. Even more frightening is that he found the skeletal remains of children under the staircase. Within these skeletons were broken daggers, which he believes were used in a deadly ritual and then broken, maybe so that they could never be used again. He claims that he is still haunted by these ghosts and was even attacked violently inside the ancient Ram Inn. This has got to be the most frightening place to be. Moundsville. A prison is a place where the worst of humanity is locked up. For some, it is for a few years, while others, it is for the rest of their lives. However, there are other prisons where the worst of the worst are sent. These are not your average prisons. Such a place is the West Virginia Penitentiary in Moundsville, which was home to about 1,000 men. Criminals were hung by the dozens here. Many more were electrocuted, while others were murdered by their own kind. Some felt they could not survive in this place and took their own lives. The stone walls of West Virginia Penitentiary have seen hard men broken, dreams shattered, and evil punished. There has been so much death and carnage here, and it will never really go away. Because of all this, it is said that some of the tortured souls who serve their term here will never leave, and they still lurk in the shadows of these prison walls. Even though the prison was shut down in 1995, a total of about 998 men have died here. It is said that their ghosts roam around the prison walls even though they are gone. There has even been a shadow man who has been seen and even photographed. The staff of the prison have been accosted by unseen forces. In addition to all that, strange noises could be heard as they echo throughout the cell blocks, and something dark lurks in the bowels of the building. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.